This is Brent Miller with HED Architects and Engineers. You're listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
The EdUp Accelerated Excellence podcast is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15 off. Learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity across both traditional and non-traditional learning spaces and experiences. And I am your host, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP, and we have a wonderful guest today, Mr. Mario Jovan Shaw. He is the founder of Messy Roots, a leadership coaching consulting organization or consultancy. So, Mario, will you introduce yourself by giving voice to your name to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community and just tell us a bit about the core work of Messy Roots?
Yes, so I'm super excited to be here to talk about coaching and the importance of it. Like you shared with me, share with your audience, I'm a founder and leadership coach for Messy Roots, which operates as a consultancy to help folks who are interested in going into coaching or utilizing coaching as a part of their leadership style. I always love to say that I'm a Midwestern at heart. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, but I reside here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where the spring and summer storms are wicked and wild, but I absolutely love them. But yeah, it's really good to be on the podcast and just to have conversation. I'm excited about this.
So yeah, let's talk. Listen, I absolutely enjoy the robustness of your laughter. It really ignites the room. I like that. And this series, you're participating in a series that uplifts and puts a spotlight on LGBTQ issues and community members for the primary goal of educational excellence. So can you just tell us, how did you get into coaching?
Yeah, well, I got into coaching because being a queer leader, at the time I was leading a major nonprofit organization is still in existence, where we supported male educators of color. I realized that there's a lot of challenges that come with being at the table based on my identity, specifically as a Black queer person. I think that oftentimes people are okay with us supporting those who are leading in education, but not necessarily leading the actual cause. And with that, just the experiences that I've had while being in her role and with that organization, I decided to, I had the opportunity to receive a coach, and it was a white woman. And I really had wanted a Black person, which was really interesting, but she had pushed me to think about actually what does my life look like beyond just the space that I was currently in. And part of that was like, what is it like to be a coach? And so we were able to literally find opportunities for me to get my coaching certification. I got it with the Jay Shetty coaching program as well as Better Up. And I started coaching leaders. And then that led me to merging that education background that I had with coaching. And I said, I would love to actually coach coaches and to help people to utilize coaching as a part of their leadership style. Not to mention that I also utilized coaching when I was leading that nonprofit organization, and I was supporting individuals, and we had coaches in the work. But I don't think that it came from education-based coaching, and so we wasn't in a general coaching world. And that's why I feel like I don't necessarily think that you need to have a certification to be a coach, but I do think that it does help because you have a level of perspective that perhaps like, traditional, somebody who maybe did not go through a coaching program don't know. And I think that is so, yeah, that's how I got into coaching, was through my own experience of being a Black queer leader.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I can see how this formal training sort of marries this idea of the art and science of coaching.
Yes.
The formal training gives you sort of that broad global perspective with perhaps some technical techniques and a vocabulary, while the art may come from what is a bit more authentic and tethered to the particular context in which you're working, along with your own personality. I mean, that
yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, the way that you broke that down, I need to copy that. That was yes, that's exactly what it is.
So we met almost a year, well, not necessarily a year ago, but we met at the Black Male Educator Convening in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And you were on a panel, and it was a LGBTQ plus panel. But what really struck me and why I had to have you on this show is that on that panel was one of your former mentees.
Yes. Yes.
So what was that like to be invited to a national convening? You are a panel member, and on the panel with you is one of your former mentees.
It was great. So one of the things that was very interesting, so I like to shout out Dr. Archie Moss with this, because what was important is that, honestly, I connected to him through Archie, who that was literally Archie's student. And through the work that we were doing with the organization, it's called Profound Gentlemen. I forgot to mention the name of it, but and so the work that we was doing with Profound Gentlemen, we had invited him to actually like speak at different events and opportunities, and through that connection, oftentimes you don't get to see a Black queer leader leading spaces, and so. Yeah, it was just really interesting for him to be able to see a Black queer leader leading the space. And I just always remembered the importance of why I do this work. And that's also why I actually decided to come out, was because, but it was a Black queer kid that had hung himself and completed suicide. And I was like, and he was out. I mean, he was queer. And he was just nervous about coming out. And so I refuse for that to happen to any other, or I want that to happen less for other Black queer kids. And, I was like, well, what would I need it if I was in his position? And I said, you know what? Like, I would have needed to see somebody who was in leadership roles and actually doing this and making it happen. And so I said, well, let me be what I would want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, I think life in some ways is like a stream that turns into a river, that flows into an ocean sometimes. So it continues to move, but you don't know how you're going to be shaped by it. But, water continues to move. Even if there's a boulder in the way, it's going to either continue to move around it or perhaps even under the boulder.
That's right. That's right. And that's a funny thing. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because so I'm a little bit of a urban farmer. I have a garden on my patio. I'm growing like different peppers and stuff like that, tomatoes, and I created an irrigation system because I was like, I need to create something so when I'm traveling, like it could still be able to water my plants and everything so they won't die. But in part of creating this system, I thought about what does it look like to be like water, and why water is so significant. And it was during the 3-year anniversary of Messy Roots, because we've been doing this work for 3 years now, that was the theme of our anniversary message of how can coaches be more like water? Just like say, water gets into everything, it seeps through every piece. But that's also like how our gifts are as well, which is so interesting to me, that even when I'm coaching typically leaders, like, your gift is your gift. How you utilize that gift is totally up to you. And that gift can be used for good or bad. Just like water, it can nourish us, but it could also kill us, right? Like with hurricanes and tsunamis and stuff. So it's how we utilize that tool and that thing that actually really does matter, in terms of its liberation for people.
I think we're onto something. So the name of your organization is Messy Roots.
Yes.
And I think that's probably deeply symbolic for you. Can you elaborate on how this concept influences your coaching approach, and really what does it mean to be messy and at the roots?
At the roots, yeah. Leadership is messy at the roots. The interesting thing is that we often see the results of the plant. I have a lot of plants in my house. You see them over here, right? And we look at the leaves and we're like, oh my God, like they're so green and beautiful. But we don't necessarily recognize the thing that makes the leaves that color, or help us to appreciate the plant that we're marveling in our house, on a bookcase, or on the corner in our bedroom. It's the root system. And so leadership is messy at the roots. And so with Messy Roots, like, we're willing to dig deep into the dirt with you and get messy with you to be able to really help you create a strong foundation, so that when people do see your leaves, when they see that you're in bloom, they see how you are beautiful, and that you actually are and that your work is beneficial, and it's not producing any type of harm, and you're actually doing the work. And we also talk about, I was thinking right now too, this idea of an invasive species too, which is really interesting, because we're dealing with that right now, and sometimes you have to uproot that too, and that's a hard process. Oftentimes with coaching, that's what we kind of help leaders to be able to do, is if they're not in the right place, if this is invasive, right, we uproot them and help them to be placed in a space that is actually beneficial for them, which is hard work, because when you get uprooted, like when you repot a plant, there's a couple of days where that plant has to get acclimated, and you don't necessarily know if that plant is going to actually survive or not, because it's in a new system. And so that is probably the most critical care moment, and that's where coaching actually is important at that moment too.
Speaking with Mario Jovan Shaw, who is the founder of Messy Roots, a leadership coaching consultancy. Mario, thank you for participating in this LGBTQ plus series. Identity politics has gained attention in the news as of late, not always in a positive way. So how might we think about supporting educators with identities that come under attack, particularly in the LGBTQ community, to avoid that tragic incident that you shared with us earlier about a young person taking their lives?
Yeah, that's real. I think one of the books that I've been reading is Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, which is really, really good. I recommend Revenge of the Tipping Point. He has Tipping Point, but then he has this book now, Revenge of the Tipping Point. And it speaks on like when there's a certain issue and it like tips, like what is the percentage in which it like tips over to where like people either care about it or don't care about it and stuff, right? And what's interesting that I see when it comes to identity politics is this issue around diversity and how words are used sometimes to manipulate the way that people may actually see you. And so within identity politics, we have to continue to still share our stories, because that's when because this is the time when people want to manipulate your message the most. So podcasts and things like this is like super important because it allows that person to be able to speak, and it allows that person for nobody else to have to tell that person's story. I'm always thinking about that. Like, how can I provide more access for people to share their own story where I don't have to share it for them, that there's a platform that they could be able to share it and bring it out into the world. That's how we combat it, right? Because when we talk about identity politics, what we're talking about is false narratives and this ideology of what we are, discussing about that person. So we got to create these, we got to bring back up like the new narratives about people. What Malcolm Gladwell's book, he talks about that, right? Like, it's so funny. Like, what is the tipping point for when white people are not comfortable with the amount of black people in the space? What is that percentage of black people? One of the things he recognized, it was like literally 29%. If white people do that, if black people move into their neighborhood, then it wouldn't go over 29% of black people, then they would stay. But you can't control that number. So oftentimes it's not about, like, I've been really critically thinking about celebrating the only and really starting to think about what does it mean to celebrate the many. Because when we have identity politics happening, you could target that one person, it's easier than targeting the many. So we have to bring in majority of folks. So if I'm the first, how do I then become the fourth person? And then those three people then bring in three people, and those three people, and it's so on. That's, and then how do we all share our story? And that collective message, I think that's what's important.
Yeah, that's really, that is actually insightful. And I didn't realize that Malcolm Gladwell had a new book, The Tipping Point. I'm going to have to check that out.
Oh, good.
So coaching, so you're talking about this idea of identity building, but I think it sparks, or it takes me back to your conversation about your own reflective practice after that tragic incident. Mm-hmm. Part of your coaching approach is to focus on personal transformation. Yeah. Even though we're talking, your role is to help leaders. And so what are some of the most profound transformations you've witnessed through your work at Messy Roots?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think like it's so funny to me. Yeah. So at Messy Roots, we have 4 different coaching approaches, and we center voices of color and leaders of in those, while also still talking about the non-melanated folks as well. But like oftentimes when you attend a traditional coaching program, you're not going to hear about Audre Lorde and Zora Neale Hurston, as well as James Baldwin, W. Du Bois, and so on, right? But like within our coaching approaches, we do that. We want to center, we start off with narrative-based storytelling, which is why I think storytelling and identity politics is so real. In our work, the way that we make sure that folks are able to get to where they need to go, and this is I think oftentimes our coaches are surprised at how much they have to grow when they decide to join our coaching program. So it's so funny because like those first 3-4 weeks, they like, oh, so like, cause I tell them, I said, hey, like, our synchronous, we have 12 weeks of synchronous and then 6 months of like async, where they join all of these random clinics to just get better. But what's so funny is that they literally be like, oh shoot, like I actually like, I did not know that I was going to be the hardest person that I would be coaching. And I was telling her, yeah, you as a coach, you're the hardest person that you will coach, because you know all of your habits, you know all of your emotions. And so in those first 3 to 4 weeks, I am pushing them to coach themselves. And that's what begins to be a little bit nerve-wracking for them. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, that reminds me of a couple of expressions. One is, doctor, heal thyself.
Yeah.
Another one that we say, teachers make the worst students.
They are. Teachers are the worst students.
So what you're saying is coaches actually have to go through a process of being coached or coaching themselves in order to be effective coaches. So in all of those examples, it really circles back to the self. So in order to heal thyself first, while we're focusing on healing others, or if you're thinking you're going to be a great teacher, you have to first and foremost be a great student.
Yeah.
And to be a good coach, you have to know what it feels like and to be coached and to nurture your own self, to be the best asset that you can be for individuals.
Yes. Yeah, it's always that self-work. So I'm glad you bring it up. Yeah, it's how are we doing the self-work in order for folks to acknowledge like the work that we're doing in our own coaching program. So yes.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUpXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
So self-work can be lonely. And this reminds me of a friend of mine, not ours, but a friend of mine who would come to a book club regularly, but he never read the books. So what the statement he made when I think I asked him one day, so why aren't you reading the books? He says, wow, that's like being by myself for, an extended period of time. So he's a very social person. So leadership can also be very lonely, particularly in schools. You're almost an island because you're helping everyone else, but there may be few people who seek to understand things from your perspective. So how can you help leaders who are struggling with isolation? Or what are your thoughts?
I think that, I think that I like to think I'm somewhat of a sociologist. I went to school for communication, so humanities area, right? But it's like, sociology is dope though. But anywho, I think that due to social media, we have, even when we're sitting by ourselves, and I think thinking about your friend, whenever we sit by ourselves, we end up like scrolling on our phones and really trying to engage with other people, but not necessarily our brains being able to recognize that this is a false perspective. This is not necessarily real, right? And so one of the things I've been trying to do when I'm waiting at the barbershop or waiting for food, if I order something, or even going to a restaurant myself, I bring a book. Now, typically it's on my iPad, but on my iPad, I take off the notifications. So it's just that. The reason why I bring it up in reference to principals and leaders feeling isolated is because of this longing for always like being able to immediately tap into community. I think that folks have been experiencing loneliness at such a higher rate because we don't know how to sit by ourselves. So like we do struggle with that and the solution that is community, right? Like I'm not gonna say like, oh, just learn how to sit by yourself, but I'm also gonna push both things. Like, yes, learn how to sit by yourself, read a book, just like what we were just talking about, and also seek the community that you need that can truly support you. I do know there's an uptick in folks wanting to be involved in communities, as well as cohorts and things like that, because it does make them feel like that they're not alone. And so I do think that those things work. It's also important for us to go to the root of the problem, though. Not just, oh, let's just slap a band-aid on here by putting you in a corner community, but let's also talk about the relationship that you have with self. And honestly, once I started to do that work myself, I felt less lonely. I don't necessarily, I always say like for me, if leadership is lonely at the top, then I need to probably think about like, who am I networking with? Who am I having conversations with that perhaps need to, I need to uptick in it, or go ask to go have dinner with somebody, so that, it doesn't stay there, So that's what I like to do. I try to hold myself accountable for that. So I try not to say that leadership is only at the top. I say I try to build, you gotta be more intentional about your community, because you gotta be more intentional about your community when you get to the top. Yeah, and I think that's harder. That's the harder part.
So you talked about sociology and language, and I do think that language is at the core of society and how we engage with others. We're always communicating to others, but to be a fully effective contributing member in which you give to that community, I think we do have to sit with ourselves to recognize what are our merits and strengths that we can bring to bear, versus we're entering into community solely for the purpose of staving off loss.
Yeah, it's the desire to bring yourself to the table whole versus in part.
And so the reason I was talking about languages, I think even in this conversation while you're talking, it sparks ideas for me. So it becomes this idea of dialogic inquiry. So we're inquiring or making connections or asking new questions through this use of communal language, through, even how we frame questions and perspectives. And that can be a wonderful tool in coaching for sure.
Yeah, that is so good. Yeah, I like that approach. Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear even more about that. Yeah, that's good.
So let's continue on this idea of centering self within community. So we know that you read a lot. You're an avid reader.
I love reading.
Yeah. And then also you practice yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that from it was either in your presentation or we were talking a while back where you talked about integrating yoga into the role of coaching.
Yes. More so mindfulness into the role of coaching. Yeah, because part of, and this is something that Dr. Sean Jenwright in his book, I guess I am a reader because I'm always bringing some of it. Dr. Sean Jenwright in his book, The Four Pivots, he talks about this around like the best leaders have a love of mindfulness because it means that they are present with their work and they're always challenging their mindsets. And so when it comes to like coaching leaders or leaders who are leading teams, the absence of that mindfulness puts them in a position where they don't know themselves. So part of to me, yoga fits in mindfulness, meditation fits in mindfulness, just like walking and sometimes even doing artwork, but just anything that you're doing to help yourself to just be present in the mind and in the body and the spirit is just really important. And those typically become your greatest leaders, those who are able to do that hard work. And mindfulness is hard for many people because it does force you to be present. So that's what I think is important. But I do yoga as a part of mine, as well as just meditation as well. Yeah, and a lot of journaling too. Yeah, but that's my mindfulness, so that I could be able to show up present in the work that I'm doing.
So I'm just wondering, when you journal, I actually, I'm not gonna say I don't journal. I think
some people do say that often, though. Yes.
Yeah, but I think I doodle. So, and I realize if I don't write down a thought I have, then I'm gonna lose it and I won't remember it, or I won't remember it in the same form as that moment, it will be lost. So, but not necessarily in an organized way. But in doing so, in journaling, do you revisit what you've written?
Sometimes, not all the time. Not all the time. So like there's this thing called artist walk. I'm pretty sure maybe some of your listeners have heard this before, but artist walk is when you are just writing down, and sometimes it might be just symbols like you said, or doodling, or even just like chicken scratch. And what's interesting is that part of it is not having to revisit. It's to just, you're supposed to do artist walk in the morning, where you're writing this down and you're really going on a journey, on a walk in your mind, and just dumping things out that comes to mind. Because when you wake up, you want to release that so that you can be able to consume what's around you. Because as an artist, I feel like sometimes I think artists fall underneath storytelling fall underneath artists. Right now, I think artists falls underneath the word storytelling right now. That's just where I'm at. But like artists and storytellers, in order for you to be able to be a great storyteller, you need to be aware of the things around you. Same thing for artists. So if you consume so many different thoughts and you're not letting it out, that becomes the problem. So artist walk, it gives you the ability to be able to write without having to, or even doodle, or even just do stuff without having to come back to it. Yeah. So I don't come back to it often. No.
Yeah, that was a curiosity for me because, again, I do take notes in meetings at work and or what's happening, and I had to realize I usually, as I say, doodle in that meeting. I'm going to have, again, dialogic inquiry. I may not share it with others in the meeting, but I'll have an idea. So I have a convention where I'll create a bracket and put my idea in a bracket. I used to draw a little light bulb, but that took too much time. Sometimes I still draw the light bulb. But I often find that I don't go back to it regularly, and I'm wondering, is that a limitation or something I should?
Yeah, I see you coming from. Yeah, no, but my notes I do come back to. I love to come back to my notes because I'm like, oh, I thought that, and then I'm an iPad user like crazy. I like to be like somewhat a minimalist that don't have to carry, like when I used to travel, I used to carry 3-4 books, a notepad, my laptop, like it's too much. But now when I travel, I usually just only have my laptop, my iPad, because I have the keyboard that can operate, as a MacBook. But on it, I have this app that does note taking called Good Notes, and so it gives me the ability to have multiple different tabs or different notes, not just one notebook. And I love that because I get to see what I did right. And sometimes I'll go back. So I'll try to change out, even though it's virtual, I try to change out a new notebook every 3 months, even though it's not going to run out because it's a virtual notebook. I like to change it out because then I like to go back to it like a year from now and be like, oh man, I wrote that. Like, oh wait, this is still a good idea and I haven't implemented this yet. Like, I like to do that. Yeah.
And also, it also centers you, grounds you, because sometimes we can become so busy that we forget about the small successes, or we begin to overly stress something that we haven't done or something that we thought didn't go well, and we forget about the small victories. But I also wanted to comment on your idea of the artist's walk. And this idea of in the morning sort of dumping, right? It's very akin to what we know as a good practice on your phone, and particularly if you have an iPhone, is to reboot it regularly.
Yes.
It stores all this data and it slows it down, and things and your apps aren't functioning as well as they should. But once you reboot it, it's sort of renewed in some ways.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So and our brains have that, and I'm also real kin to, cause I play a lot of tennis, and I notice, when I'm eating whole foods versus like artificial foods and stuff.
Not whole food meaning the store.
Not the store, but like whole as in and the full, like, so I've been learning. Well, I went to the doctor like 2 weeks ago, and I love having conversations with my doctor. But he's like, the reason why artificial foods are not good is because the way that they are created is things that your body wants to break down from whole foods that you eat. So, apple has all of these different components in it, but if we manufactured the components, in the apple and broke that down for then it to be quote unquote an apple, when our bodies consume it, they're like, oh wait, how do I do this work? And so they're not your cells and everything, they're not exercising. So that's why you become sluggish, because you're not doing the work. But when your body has something to do, which is funny, that's when you have all of the energy, because it's moving in the directions it want to go. That helps with my brain. I thrive with ADHD. I just say thrive because I love having ADHD. And I didn't find out till 3 years ago. And one of the things that help us though is protein, because protein, it helps with the dopamine in our brain so that we can level out and not easily seek junk dopamine, like junk food type dopamine, and just consume, right? Versus leveling our brains out, allowing ourselves to get bored, all of those things, like that is important for the brain so that you can function. Like people say, oh, I don't like to read because I fall asleep when I read. It's like, that's fine. And funny thing is, sometimes I fall asleep when I read still. I might only get through 2 pages and then be knocked out. But then sometimes I can get through 25, 30, 40 pages in one sitting. As long as you're just doing it, right? Your brain learns that. But it slows down your brain so that, like, definitely reading does. So then when you actually read, a lot of people can't do it because they so used to their brain going like this. As soon as your brain going to reading, you fall asleep because you find it's able to slow the sucker down. The thing is, like, I want to fully shut down now. So I'm trying to get back to boredom and consistency and some stuff that's just mundane, because it helps to build up a great discipline and practice so that you can do some of the things that you need to do that may not be quote unquote the most exciting, but it's super beneficial for your mindset. We got to have leaders that sustain themselves,
That is true. And again, I have learned something new. I did not know, or I never associated the idea of falling asleep when you're reading with relaxation.
Yeah.
And I probably should have, because the first time I tried to practice yoga, and I say try.
Yeah, you fell asleep.
I was at a studio, and I remember I fell asleep.
Yeah.
And
my best friend falls asleep all the time when he does yoga.
Yeah. And
all the time.
The instructor says, no, that's good.
That's good.
That means you're relaxed.
Yes. My favorite pose, and again, I have my yoga certification, but my favorite pose is corpse. I love corpse pose. I love to sit there, knock out, fall asleep. Oh my God, the best thing. And on top of that, having ADHD, for your folks who are listening, some people say, oh man, like when I'm meditating, like, I have a hard time focusing. And I always tell folks that, like, honestly, it's not about trying to focus to think about nothing, but it's what John Kabat-Zinn calls non-judgment. So we all judge, but it's about not judging about judging. That's what non-judgment is about. So not feeling bad that you're judging, but processing it in a way that needs to be processed. So don't judge yourself about yourself because you can't focus, but acknowledge your thought and then move it on. What we tend to do is when we feel like, oh, we're judging somebody, we harp on it. We allow that energy to manifest inside of us versus allowing it to just pass by, right? So it's non-judgment, meaning don't judge yourself judging, by allowing that thought or that mind to just driftly go. And for your folks who have ADHD, laying down is my favorite meditation pose. A lot of people see meditation from like this, Rafiki, everything, or you see a lot of people sitting up, but laying down helps me to ground myself, and for ADHD to really allow the distraction to pass by a little bit more. And then also for some folks, try a sleep mask too, because eliminating the light can also do it. But if you fall asleep during meditation, what many monks will say is that was what's supposed to happen. Your body is relaxed.
Or your body just needed sleep.
Your body needed sleep.
Which is the same. Relax. That's right.
That's right.
Particularly in the go society.
Yes. Yeah.
So I asked this question, not to every guest, but I do find myself asking this question frequently, and I need to figure out why, but I think it's still important. What would you say has been the most difficult experience in your founding and sustaining of Messy Roots, and what have you learned from that experience so far?
Well, that's a good question. That's really good. I think continue to be present. I think that's the most difficult thing is as a entrepreneur, right? Like, I'm still an entrepreneur. You got, business taxes, you got to submit, your receipts so you could be on top of certain things and stuff. I am not sometimes the best at being present. I'm always thinking about sometimes the revenue that 6 months from now. And in order to do this work, you have to be present. So how do you create a system that helps you to be present and create that, funnel of income so that you know that you're going to always have like a certain amount coming in? I think for many leaders who are trying to become an entrepreneur, I jumped the bandwagon twice and it was successful. I don't recommend that though. Even though I did it, I think it's the silliest thing to do. But yeah, my first business, I only had like less than $1,000 in my bank account, checkings and savings, and went on and started the first business just like that. And it became a multi-million-dollar org. And then the second business, Messy Roots, similar situation, a little bit more money, but it wasn't 3 months of savings or 6 months of savings at all. And here we are 3 years later, and we are, celebrating, with the theme Be Like Water. I think people need to, figure out their systems, just reach out to people, recognize who your contact folks are, and then move forward with that. I don't think that you should quickly be jumping. And another thing too that I will say is that my role was not to be an entrepreneur. My role was to actually like really fulfill my purpose. It's just that I felt like that I could not do that in other confines of other areas. I felt like being an entrepreneur was the best approach for me to be able to do that. I wasn't be an entrepreneur first and then do the work. It was, this is the purpose in life. This is the skill that I have. What would be the best really, garden or foundation for me to be able to grow in, to be able to do this work? And it happened to be entrepreneurship. And that's how I see it. Hopefully it stays that way because I love it. But if I end up being, working for somebody or something like that, it just has to match my purpose. That's what it has to do. If it doesn't do that, then no, can't do it.
So I read, this is so beautiful, the idea of leading with your purpose. But this also takes us in some ways back full circle to the top of the show. So centering oneself, understanding self, having a purpose, clearing the path in your workspace to help others, that allows you to be present in order to do that. So yes, you still have to attend to all the technical attributes of running a business, but how do you create, activities or procedures, laws and systems that function in a way that allow you to maintain the business while also being present for your clients and those you have to engage with?
Yeah, yeah. So it becomes easier. Yeah, I created the curriculum for Messy Roots myself. Um, and at that time period, obviously it becomes a lot of work. And then I also, we have um, a free membership on messyroots.org. You just go there and you click free membership, and that took some time to be able to build that platform out. But then once it's built, it becomes easier because that work is no longer something that you have to do, which is why I get it. I get the opportunity to read a lot, right? But that I created a schedule for me to be able to do that so that I can, because I think reading really, really does help you to be one of the best coaches out there, because it gives you the perspective of other people as well as tools that you can utilize in your coaching sessions.
We're speaking with Mario Jovan, the founder of Messy Roots, a leadership coaching consultancy. So, Mario, what is next for Messy Roots and or for you personally that you would like to share with the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community, and how might we connect with your work?
Yeah, well, what's next personally, and we're just sharing this, but like what's next personally is really think about what dating does look like for me, because I think that I always, I have, for 10 years been in entrepreneurship world, and part of that for me is understanding what I actually like as a Black queer person in terms of like energy and partnership. And I'm loving it. I'm loving the journey. Never gone any days. I'm loving, funny thing is loving like myself and my growth in it, which I think like, oh, wow. Like, not having to always go the quote unquote traditional route of like, they gotta be this, they gotta be that. Like, but more so, what is this feeling that I like? Again, I'm really spiritual and I love connecting to people in that way. And I think I have gotten to a place now where I'm unapologetic about knowing that is definitely something that I desire and want in a relationship. And with Messy Roots, I think like the spirituality pieces, that's interesting. The spirituality pieces starting to rise in Messy Roots as well. With the one thing that we want to do more is retreats, and to be able to help people ground themselves, mind, body, and soul. So that'll be happening in 2026. I'm trying to work on that now. And that's another thing too. I've been having space to project things later versus like, oh, do it and then send it out in 5 days. Like, I'm tired of doing that. Like I'm like slow and methodically working on things. And like, I'm like, oh, I will release this in a year. And people are like, a year? I'm like, yeah, like I love that idea of working on something and letting it, like right now Messy Roots is in a good place, and the stuff that we're doing now was built 2-3 years ago, right? So like, this stuff takes time, but I do think that spiritual aspect of Messy Roots is also coming out as well.
Right. So I mean that again, it's almost like clarity, but also being present. So it gives you, so it restricts or reduces that urge to sort of, we need to act immediately. We need to do this right now. We need to be in a rush. We need to be in a hurry.
Yep. And just instead, just show up, just be present, do the work that you need to do with what you got right now, and then project ahead, like work on the things. Like, again, we're working on retreats now, but that won't be until late 2026 that will be released. That's a good year from a little bit over a year from now, given the timeline of where the date that we want to have the first one. But I'm not in the business of like, okay, let's do this in 3 months. Like, no, we can wait. Yeah.
So we can look forward to retreats. Will those be open to the general public, or will those be open to your current clients, like for us who are waiting for 2026 to roll in?
For general public, for everyone. That's the cool part. Yeah. I try as much not to gatekeep and restrict. I always try to create avenues for more people to gain access to.
And you mentioned the website earlier. Can you?
Yeah, messyroots.org.
Messyroots.org. Look for the workshops and retreats that will take place in 2026. And I'm sure we're going to meet you on the road, perhaps at the Blagma Educator convening this year or at some other outlet. So, Mario Jovan, I want to thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emily Bloom, a recent graduate of Fordham University's Mental Health Counseling Program. Congratulations, Emily! And we want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience Network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.